Today I'm going to be talking about all the scams and shady going-ons that used to go on in the virtual world of Habbo Hotel. Back in August of last year, I made a video about how much of a mess Habbo Hotel was, and as of right now, it is somehow the most viewed video on my channel. While most of you seem to agree that the game has a lot of issues, there were a few people who defended the game. I was going to leave it there though. I'd made a video, it done fairly well, and that was the end of it. However, a couple of videos I recently watched by the YouTuber on screen sparked my interest in the subject again. He speaks in depth about all the different ways that teenagers used to, and to some certain extent still, make money in game through many scams. And let me just say this, for a game with an age rating of only 13, I'm surprised that some of these even happened in the first place. There were kids making hundreds of dollars in real life solely through selling in-game currency on multiple sites that resold Habbo coins. You should go and check out his videos after this one if you want to know more about it. Anyway, after that I started to dig deeper into it all and realised that over time this game had evolved into an empire of betting, scamming and capitalism. So basically a virtual representation of real life. So after a few days of watching videos, reading about the game and even going back and playing it for a little while, I think I have gathered a list of the most interesting ethical business practices. I just want to point out there are also many more than the ones that I'm going to talk about in this video, but I can't go over all of them today or we'd be here for hours, and trust me, no one wants that. If you're either below the age of 10 or you haven't seen my previous video, Habbo Hotel is an online chat room designed mainly for teenagers to chat to one another. Although like most games aimed at a younger audience, their player base probably consists of people who are much older than that, which can spark another problem. When you boil the game down, everything is run by the in-game currency, that being the Habbo coins. These allow you to get nice clothes, furniture for your rooms, membership and basically anything else that's purchasable in game. For reference, 613 coins right now will cost you around £50 of real life money, so keep that in mind for the rest of the video. When the game was in its prime in the early 2010s, you could just sell these coins through various sites, similar to how people used to buy and sell FIFA coins. But you see, when you make a game for young adults that revolves around in-game currency, which you can sell for real life cash, you must be stupid to think this wouldn't create a toxic, untrusting environment. Lo and behold, that's exactly what it did, with scamming, peer pressure, underage gambling and manipulation popping up all over the place. All of this still went on despite there being hundreds of moderators back then, and to be fair, there were so many ways of scamming going on all at once that I don't blame them for not being able to keep up. In 2020, the game is moderated by the AI which barely does anything. The only time players have to be careful now is when one of the few remaining staff members decides to go online and see what everyone's doing. This is due to a lot of events that have taken place since its launch 20 years ago, the most notable probably being the scandal in 2012 which got worldwide news coverage.
Tonight, an exclusive report on the massive global children's website Habbo Hotel that has become a mecca for paedophiles.
It also led to half of its player base leaving. You would think that all of this would make scamming a whole lot easier, but actually it's not. Back in 2014, Habbo dealt a big backhanded slap to the scammers. They brought in a casino ban which made owning and running a casino a bannable offence. It also put a limit on the amount of dice and wheels that a player could have placed in one room at a certain time, which made it a pain to run casinos on your own. Luckily for us, most of these scams have been documented over the years, so we can still take a look at the most interesting ones and really get a feel of what the game used to be like back in its glory days. Without further ado, let me take you back to Habbo in its prime and look at some of the ways me, you and so many others were foolishly scammed in this game by random teenagers. It's not a game, it's a rich thing. Not all scammers are created equal, and because of this, many methods of scamming have been banned or are so commonly done that no one falls to them anymore. With that being said, during the rise of the game, low effort scams were profitable enough for most users, so they didn't have to come up with highly sophisticated plans like the ones I'll talk about later. The password scams definitely fall under the category of low effort, but that doesn't mean they were not successful. In a game filled with a lot of young, naive and new players, it wasn't hard for a scammer to find an easy victim. The simplest of all password scams was to trick their user into outright typing their password. All a scammer would need to do is walk into a room and say something along the lines of, "Look, if you type your password in, it will be censored in chat." The likelihood of someone typing their password is low, but once someone does, you'd be able to open up another tab and boom, you can log in with their username and password. If a scammer wanted to be a bit more successful in their efforts, they would use the Control-M technique. Here, the scammer would tell their victim to type out their password without pressing enter. Then they would get them to do some sort of action like waving or move into a certain location, followed by pressing Control-M. The whole time this is going on, the victim's under the assumption that they're going to get 50 coins for doing so, but that's not the case. In fact, pressing Control-M worked the same as pressing the enter button, meaning they would just have told the person their password with the letter M added onto the end. The item dupe scam was also pretty prevalent throughout the entirety of Habbo. Most users wouldn't fall for the straight up "I can duplicate your items if you give them to me" trick, so they had to add a little twist to it. To play this one out, you would need a partner in crime, this being a friend or an alt account. All you and your partner would do is play out a fake scenario in which your partner is a skeptical user who doesn't think that you can duplicate their items until, lo and behold, you do it for them. After that, the other people in the room may actually believe that you practice what you preach, since they did just see it go down right in front of them. Once one of the players in the room sends you their items or coins, you'd simply ban them from the room. Next up, there was the mod scam, which is pretty self-explanatory. The user would impersonate an undercover game moderator, saying that they are a mod, but no one knows as they're trying to catch scammers. The scammer may act friendly and hang around for a while until they have convinced their victim that they are actually a mod. From here they can say many things like, "Give me your items, I'll duplicate them, give me your coins or I'll ban you," or "I can make you moderate if you give me a password." If the scammer's feeling cheeky, they may take a different approach and make the victim out to be the criminal in this situation. In 2012, I witnessed one of my in-game friends convince a player they were a mod, tell the victim that the account they are on had been stolen a few days ago, and then trick them into giving them their password just to confirm it was their account. I have to admit, I was impressed by how easily he finessed the user, but sadly for scammers, these methods became harder and harder to do as time went on. Habbo started to release articles on account security, banned anyone who seemed to be pulling off a scam, and put the nail in the coffin by changing the way you log in. You see, previously, you could log in by just using your username and password. This is why it was so easy to get into someone's account, and you only needed one piece of information. But as Habbo cracked down on scammers, they changed up the login system. To log in, you needed the email that you set up the account with, not your username, meaning if you wanted to use any of the methods above, you'd have to get a whole nother piece of information out of your victim. This meant that scammers had to get more creative. They had to come up with more complex and less obvious ways of leeching coins out of their victim. In many ways, it made it a whole lot worse. The amount they made out of their new methods was tenfold to the amount they were making before. While they were still runnable after the casino ban of 2014, since a casino style room was still allowed, they were 100 times more viable beforehand, and were one of the most popular ways of scamming in the early 2010s. The scams in casinos went way beyond kicking a player once they had won a bet. Although some people did do this, it would quickly lead to the account being tarnished, and no one else would go into the casino. The first wave of casinos in Habbo were fairly simple on the surface, but when you look deeper into it, you realise how far in advance the owners of these casinos planned. I'm just jealous that I didn't try this back then, especially after watching Warlord's video on how he made $200 a day. A casino would usually be run by the richest of the rich. They would build a room stacked to the brim with rare items because they could. The layout would be simple, a space for a dealer and his dice and a space for the gambler and his dice. It didn't really matter what game was being played, whether it be slots, beat the dealer, high or low, or the most popular game of all 21. Here's where it gets interesting though. As you would guess, the owners would never want to lose any money or items, and as a dealer, that is always a possibility. So to get around this, they would sell dealer passes to anyone in the casino, and any dealer caught scamming would simply be kicked. After a month or two of running one casino, they would shut it down, make a new account, set up another casino, and herd all the gamblers into there. The reasoning behind this is to make the previous passes at the dealers bought invalid in hopes that they will buy another one at your new casino. You may think this is a stupid idea, but let me show you an example from Warlord's video that will put it into perspective. In one of their many casinos, they sold 486 gold passes for 600 coins. This totals up to 291,600 coins. At the time of him doing this, 1,000 coins would equal around $70 in real life, meaning they made over 20,000 just from one of their casinos. That is absolutely insane, and there were so many users who were able to do this for a couple of years, up until the infamous casino ban, which caused everything to plummet in price. I can only imagine the levels of rich they were. In Habbo, you were really never safe from scams though. Even when you were playing harmless games such as Fall Inferno, Costume Change or the Fridge. The game run here would often entice people to play through offering rares as rewards for winning. Little did they know that they had an alt account or friend in game who was not going to lose. Again, while you could have just kicked and banned the winner, doing so wasn't a long-term option if you wanted to make big bucks from hosting a game. Instead, the money came from people who would pay to stay, or most importantly, pay to rev. Pay to stay is exactly as it sounds. Once a user loses the game, they are offered this as an option, and if they choose it, they have to pay a small sum to stay in the game. Paying to rev is a little different though, and is usually where most of the money comes from. Revving is a short term often used in Habbo, which means to get revenge on a player in game. If you offer enough money and the person you got revenge on doesn't pay up, they are simply kicked from the game. However, if the person you acted revenge upon can pay more than you, then you have to pay more than them, and well, you see where I'm going here. So the owner of the game would get their partner in crime to play the game, waiting until someone acts revenge upon them. Then the bid and war to see who's kicked will commence, and well, since your friend isn't paying in the first place, guess who's gonna lose? After that, you and your friend would split the profit, start up another game and wait for it to happen all over again. Out of all the scams, this is probably the hardest to prove, as there are multiple counts involved, and the only people who can see trade history would be the mods. And I guarantee that the mods couldn't give a shit about you and your lost revenge funds. Game scams were the safest for you and your friends to try and pull off, as there was little to no risk involved most of the time. After the loss of casinos, people had to once again find another viable method of betting and scamming while making it seem like the odds are in the gambler's favour. And that nicely brings me on to my final scam of the day. Wired Fernie giveaways. Wired Fernie was introduced in 2010 and actually took some sort of brainpower to make it all work. It allowed users to add triggers to their rooms, effects that went off at certain times, and even optional conditions that needed to be met before setting off the trigger. There were almost endless possibilities for what could be done with Wired Fernie in-game, and it's safe to say that people had a field day when it came to scamming with these items. On top of all that, it allowed players to make dice replicas, even past the betting ban, but this time they could twist the odds into their favour. In some ways, it was better to have normal dices over these ones, as the only person who could see the effects of the Wired Fernie was the owner and people they gave rights to in the room. This meant that anyone who was betting actually had no idea whether or not the odds were fair to begin with. A lot of people who scammed users this way mentioned how they often tried to make their Wired Fernie seem legit by putting it in plain sight. However, most players didn't realise that you could stack the trigger and effects panels on top of each other to the point where they were off screen. On top of this, owners could place a piece of furniture in front of the boxes, making it impossible for anyone to see the extra wiring. Anyway, giveaway game rooms were usually set out in 4 different spaces, these being the game runner's spot, waiting queues, game area, and if the owner included it, the grand prize space. Let me go through a typical giveaway run so that you can get an idea of what they were like. Once you enter the room, you were greeted with 2 queues, one being the free peasant queue, and the other one being either a fast pass or rare giveaway queue. If you go down the peasant one, it will be free to play, however it takes a long time and the reward is usually just a coin or 2. If you go down the fast pass, it usually just means that you get more goes as the queue is shorter, and if it's for rarer prizes, then it usually has the same odds as before, but the end prize is just better. Can you guess what the catch is though? Yep, you either have to buy a pass or trade some sort of item to use the better queues. The chances are that even once you have paid to get more goes or better prizes, you will still rarely, if at all, ever win. The game area usually has multiple sections as well, with a bunch of 50-50 pure luck based switches, although I guarantee they've been rigged as well. Most also had this small section with 9 teleporter pads. If you step on one of the winning ones, you get sent to collect your prize, and if you step on one of the losers, you are sent right back to the start. This is probably the most frustrating part of all, since most players didn't know that you could stack these pads on top of each other over and over again, just destroying the player's chance of winning. So to end this video off, I wanted to show you a real example of how much people were making off casinos and scammings in Habbo. Over the space of around 3 years, YouTuber Comp Habbo uploaded a final video showing how much he made off the game, and it all totaled up to around $60,000. 60k is an insane amount, but would you be surprised if I said there were some people who made even more than him? Probably not, to be honest, after everything I've shown you. Habbo Hotel was created to be a place for teenagers to hang out, build rooms, play games, and most importantly, socialise with others from all around the world. And I'm guessing that no one involved in the making of the game ever thought it would end up like this. Although it did turn into a complete mess of scams and betrayals, many still have a lot of fond memories from playing the game, and I know for sure that it taught me many life lessons. Maybe I'll make another video on the game to talk about some other aspects which caused the downfall of Habbo, but for now I'm out. If you have any stories of your own experiences from the game, tell all of us in the comments below. I'm interested to see what others' experience of the games were like. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe as well to see what my next video is. Don't ask, I have no idea when it will be. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.